Let's podcast. Alongside Joe Giglio, I'm Joe Ovies, inside Eford Studios in downtown Raleigh. Thanks to Empire Properties and thanks to Copiers Plus. Check them out online at copiers-plus.com. You might wake up today and go, man, how is it already November? Well, as the year comes to a close, you're looking back on how things went well or didn't go well. You're looking at ways to save money in 2025. Well, best way to do it is with print management, document management, with our friends at Copiers Plus. So check them out online at copiers-plus.com. Speaking of November, it's that time, Joe. We all gathered around the television last night as a country, and we settled in, not knowing what to expect. You know, it's kind of a weird year so far. Yeah. New things, right?
Yeah, like there's a popular vote, there's an electoral college. Sometimes it could be confusing.
I think, honestly, we get wrapped up in the polls. But what you come to find out is on, November 5th, on a Tuesday night, those polls stop mattering. And it comes down to what a bunch of men think. Okay? It's what ultimately comes down to. What do a bunch of dudes think? And what we come to find out last night is that a bunch of dudes think that Oregon, Georgia, Miami, and BYU are your top 4 teams bracketed in the quarterfinals of the new college football playoff. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm still a little confused.
Okay. Well, yeah, just like there's a popular vote and an electoral college.
Yeah, I'm a little confused by all of this.
We have the college football rankings.
Yes.
And if you look at those, you're like, okay, Oregon number 1, Ohio State number 2, Georgia number 3, and
BYU's 9th.
BYU's 9th.
But they're the 4th
and
team.
Miami's 4th, but Miami's now the 3rd seed.
Yeah.
So here it is. There are the rankings,
yes,
and then there are the seeds, and there's the bracket.
Okay.
And those seeds, the top 4 teams are the highest ranked conference champions, the 4 highest ranked conference champions. Well, again, if you really want to be confused, Oregon and Ohio State, they're in the same conference this year. Okay, so that drops Ohio State down into the first round. And then you have Miami, then Texas. Well, Texas and Georgia are in the same conference. So one of them has to be dropped down. So that's why it's slightly confusing when you're thinking about what the ranking is and what the seeding is. 2 different things. And you're right. There you see BYU all the way down at number 9. But there they are as the 4th seed. And then you're thinking, well, BYU, they're an independent. No,
they're not.
They're the Big 12. So that's where the Big 12 champion would likely be.
Okay.
Interesting part to me, and you like to talk about the bottom of the rankings and how are they trying to position the bottom of the rankings to justify the top of the rankings.
I can tell you right now, I see it if you're watching on YouTube, I got the ESPN bracket from last night. SMU at 13, first team out of the college football playoff brackets, bolsters BYU because BYU's big win and SMU's only loss is to BYU. So that helps BYU in the discussion. And I don't see SMU losing until they get to the conference championship game against Miami, which gets to another wrinkle as it relates to ACC teams and how many ACC teams will be in. I told you yesterday, you're looking across the landscape of this country and wondering, man, what's cooked? I'll tell you what's cooked. The ACC is cooked with the potential of 2 teams in the college football playoff, depending on how the rest of the year plays out. I was going to say
they would definitely need Miami to win out.
Yes.
Right? Get to 12-0 and then have either SMU or Clemson be the second team and then beat them because as the automatic, then they would get an automatic bid. The ACC champion, the top 4 conference champions get an automatic bid. So then they would be in and then Miami would get an at-large spot. So the interesting thing to me, you talked about the 2-loss SEC teams, and you talked about where they were, vis-a-vis to some one-loss teams.
Alabama's always going to get the benefit of the doubt. Alabama loses to Vanderbilt in normal circumstances. Vanderbilt is viewed as a bad loss, but it's Alabama, so therefore Vanderbilt is built different this year, and they are positioned to be in the college football playoff as a 2-loss Alabama team. Even without Nick Saban, they're still getting the benefit of the doubt.
Well, and that's because they beat Georgia.
Yes,
quite frankly. That's where their power is coming from right now. The really one that stood out to me, though, is Army's unbeaten.
Yeah.
And they're number 25.
Yeah.
And you may not know this, but the composition of the playoff committee included 2 Army connections in recent years. Now, both of those connections are gone, but normally there's like a lingering effect in there. 8-0 Army is 25. 7-1 Boise State is 12. I did not expect to see that. Now, you're saying, yeah, but sure. What didn't Boise State do something? Yeah, they had a close loss to Oregon. So losses matter when you want them to matter. Good losses matter when you want to.
It's classic college football playoff committee work.
But look who they stuck in there. Washington State is the one that they're propping up Boise State's resume with, who they put in at 21 ahead of both Louisville and Clemson.
Now, there's a couple things to keep in mind when it comes to this. And like I joked earlier, none of this matters. It's just
the first one almost never shakes out to be the way that it ends up.
Nothing matters in this situation. Some of this stuff is actually already going to play out, including the 2-loss SEC teams that are in the mix right now for the college football playoff, because some of them will knock each other out. So while I say the ACC is cooked because the wrong team is in the mix for a potential second team to the college football playoff, that being SMU, there is enough wonkiness in front of them that if they handle their business and they go undefeated into the ACC championship game and they have a competitive game, if the junior varsity plays the varsity to a competitive loss, I can see SMU being that second team because losing to BYU is no shame. However, the Big 12's kind of wonky too, because you're talking about all the other interesting lower, the back half of the top 25. Well, look at Colorado at 20. This gets back to automatic bids, right? Conference champions. And Colorado is not out of the running yet. So if Colorado runs the table, Iowa State loses, that means Colorado would face BYU in a Big 12 championship game, and anything goes in that situation, right? So I can see why they've positioned Colorado where they are, because Colorado means eyeballs. Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, that's eyeballs. A lot of people would tune in one way or the other to watch how that team plays out in a college football playoff. So that's another thing to kind of be on the lookout for going forward.
Well, also keep in mind, we're guaranteed a Georgia-Tennessee game in the regular season.
Yep.
We're on track for a Georgia-Texas rematch in the SEC championship, and we're seemingly on track for an Oregon-Ohio State matchup in the Big Ten championship. So you're going to see a lot of these teams play against each other. The question is, how are they ultimately going to judge, let's just say, a Tennessee? Let's say Tennessee goes down to Georgia and loses. I believe a 10-2 Tennessee, on the strength of their win over Alabama, is going to get in. I believe Alabama, who, if they can pull this thing into the barn at 10-2, I think that win over Georgia is going to help them. It all comes down to, what do you have on your resume that's ultimately going to help you? I want to go back to a point, though, that Manny Diaz made at the beginning of the season at ACC Media Days.
Yeah.
Oregon and Ohio State have played each other, right? The other teams on there, Penn State and Indiana. Once again, the Big Ten basically has 2 or 3 good teams, and the other ones are propped up by the fact that they don't play each other.
Right.
So Penn State plays Ohio State. They don't play Oregon. Ohio State played Oregon, and then they played Penn State. They're there where they are. Indiana plays Ohio State, doesn't play any of the other teams. So the greatest trick the Big Ten has pulled is convincing the rest of the college football world, well, you see, because of our teams at the top, we're that much better than everyone else. When the truth of the matter is, there's a lot of scheduling luck involved in the Big Ten, and there always has been. Always has been.
Well, you've always told me bracket luck is real.
It is real.
We've seen all sorts of instances of bracket luck being real, have we not?
Definition of real.
Yes. Yes, indeed. So I'm looking at DraftKings, the sportsbook app right now. And if you use the promo code OG24 as a new customer, you bet $5, you get $200 in bonus bets. You might use one of those bonus bets on the college football playoff. Right now, you have odds to make the college football playoff. I mean, you got some obvious ones, Oregon, Ohio State, things like that. But I'm more curious about things like Colorado. Colorado right now, plus 200 to make the college football playoff. We've been talking about SMU. SMU is plus 100 to make the college football playoff. You brought up Army. They're plus 1,000 right now to make the college football playoff.
Army was really not done.
Yeah,
very kindly.
By the way, Pitt somehow, even though they lose to SMU, they're still showing up in that top 25. They're plus 2,500 right now. And then, of course, you want to go to the champion. That's easy enough to do too. Right now, Ohio State is plus 330, Georgia is plus 425, Oregon is 425, and Texas is plus 500. With Cam Ward, you know me, I might just put $5 down on Miami at plus 1,200 because when you got a quarterback like that, you never know what's going to happen. But you got all sorts of options on DraftKings. Look, the point is fun. You know me, I got that $5 gang. We're talking college football. You might actually go to a Carolina Hurricanes game and think, you know what? I'm going to be $5 gang on Seth Jarvis, like our guy Scott was last night. He tweeted at us, my $5 Joe bet for the night. Thanks, Jarvis. It was a 2-pick parlay at plus 286 on DraftKings. Carolina Hurricanes minus 1.5 with Seth Jarvis as an anytime goal scorer. That was enough money to pay for a beer and some ice cream, right?
Perfect.
Right?
That's all we're looking for.
That's all we're looking for. And it's all at DraftKings. So we're talking NHL and the NBA, of course, all sorts of fun single game parlays or multiplayer parlays that you can do. I think these X players are going to score a bunch of threes. It's all there for you on DraftKings, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And if it's your first time, new DraftKings customers who bet $5 will get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you use the promo code OG24. Again, that's OG24. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Time for legal. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/bball. Nailed it.
Housekeeping.
Or kinda. Big thanks to Enovana. Check them out online at enovana.com. Green cleaning solutions.
If you have mess inside your mansion or trash in your cabana, get it clean with Enovana.
We brought up the Canes earlier. We're going to talk to Mike Maniscalco here in a second. If you want more Canes coverage, sign up for OGTriangleMedia.com. Our guy Tom Edwards will have his Wednesday drop on the Carolina Hurricanes, which you can get part of the newsletter portion of OG Fans. Again, all you got to do is go to OGTriangleMedia.com. Dimitri and I will also drop an OG on business today. We'll get into yet another spat between Stephen A. and
Pat McAfee.
Pat McAfee's in it. But no, Stephen A. and KD are at it again.
Okay.
They're at it again. You know, here we go again. Got people caping up for Bob Costas as well. And also a look at how election coverage might inform sports coverage going forward. New technology. Like Brian Williams was essentially doing coverage at the Amazon studio. It looked like a Star Wars set. So when's that going to make its way over to ESPN, right? So all that as a part of OG Fans, OGTriangleMedia.com. Also, you can go to breakingtea.com/OG. You can get show shirts. We've got the throwback to the Cougars. We got the ice caps. We got the dead conference. We got Skyhawks inspired stuff. It's all at breakingtea.com/OG. You get t-shirts, V-necks, hoodies, kids shirts, right? I believe the children are our future. Put them in an OG shirt so they're future listeners. So again, that's breakingtea.com/OG. Big thanks to our corporate champions and congratulations to one of them. Our friends at Longleaf Swine. You can check them out at longleafswine.com. The NNO put out their Raleigh's Best, and Longleaf Swine was listed as Raleigh's Best Barbecue. So go check that out, longleafswine.com. We got Thanksgiving coming up. They can cater that stuff for you. Or better yet, just go. It's perfect weather this time of the year to go sit outside in downtown Raleigh.
It's their Super Bowl. Go check them out.
Big thanks to Two Roosters. You can check them out at tworoosters.com. You can get the chocolate chess pie. Or you can go to the arena and get yourself the Slave and Sunday. You were working last night.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what, Joe? So was I. I was working.
Putting in that work.
I was putting in that work. I'm gonna hold this up on YouTube on my phone because I didn't have time to put this thing up on the StreamYard. But that is the Slavin Sundae with a little 74 sticker. It's got a brownie base. It's got vanilla ice cream. It's got like some Oreo goodness in there. It's got Heath Crunch in there. It's got peanuts. It's got red sprinkles. And it is absolutely fantastic. And I have no shame that I ate the entire dang thing myself.
Jealous.
It really is for two people. But when it comes to this kind of stuff, I power through.
I'm jealous, A, that you had it. I'm jealous, B, that Slavin gets his own flavor.
I know.
C, that, chocolate chest pie will be available for the week of Thanksgiving. The week of Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Just letting you all know. Big thanks to Matt Davis over at State Farm. Check him out online at insuregarner.com, theoginsurance.com, or you can call him directly at 919-779-8277.
Yeah, the best thing to do is have a conversation. You don't know what you could save, and it might be home, might be auto, might be both. Seriously, you might look at it and go, what am I doing? You might not know the answers.
You might not know.
So go make a call, 919-779-8277. Figure out the best ways for you and your policies.
Joining us on the Heister Automotive Group hotline is Mike Maniscalco. He is the play-by-play voice for the Carolina Hurricanes. Mike! Can't stay hot, man.
Yeah, not a lot of that lately for me, Joe, other than it's to talk about how good this team is playing and to get to the record that they've gotten to through 11 games, 9-2-0. It's not a fluke, and it's not like that they have played lesser competition either. Yeah. So this is something that is tangible. It's something that I think you can put stock in. Mm-hmm. Now, are the Canes going to play at an 8:30 clip the rest of the year? Probably not. But what we've seen so far in the early going is that when it's all together, this team is really hard to beat.
It's not only that they're all together, is that guys that you've been. I'll put it like this. I know the Canes recently changed their slogan. Their year motto, right? And we cause chaos was the last time. I mean, we could do a whole Mount Rushmore of Cane's slogan. You'll know when you go, right? Redvolution, all those kinds of things.
This is hockey.
This is hockey. But I feel like there was a missed opportunity with the way Martin Necas is playing, is that you could say Carolina Hurricanes patiently waited. And now we've got this. We've got Martin Necas. We've patiently waited for Martin Necas to do this. Now he's the embodiment of his Instagram. Just, here I am, baby. We're just making this thing happen. Guy's been absolutely on fire. And I guess this gets back to Rod Brindamore and what he's told you, what he's told us. And sometimes it's that simple. When there's nobody else in front of you and it's now your turn and it's time for you to step up, that's exactly what he's done. He's been a joy to watch so far this season.
Well, first off, all good things are worth the wait. And I hope the one good thing when I hear that the internet is forever, is photos like that never go away.
No, it's still on his Instagram account. He hasn't deleted it.
Should be. Oh my God! If I'd own that, who wouldn't? But it is to the point. And look, the one thing that the Canes banked on, I won't say gambled on, but banked on this year. When we go back and do the revisionist history of, well, they lost this and they didn't bring in that. They were banking that Martin Necas and or Andrei Svechnikov were ready to take a step up in their game offensively. The one thing, I'll go with Svechnikov first real quick, and I know we're talking about Martin Necas.
Yeah.
But Andrei Svechnikov's complete game this year is probably the best I've seen it. Meaning getting back and back checking, being physical, doing those little things and setting up plays. We'll see if the goals come. For Martin Necas, he's just on another planet right now. I mean, he has gotten into the zone early with 20 points at the time we're doing this, 20 points through 11 games. He is beyond staying hot. He is the sun. And I think for him, part of it might have actually been guys, and I talk to the players. I'm fortunate enough to be around them every day in the locker room when there's practice. But I think he's just comfortable this year because there's no contract issue to worry about this year. You got a deal done. And right now it's gone from, is that deal going to work out for the Canes to, Martin Necas is grossly underpaid for the production that you're getting out of him right now. So I think it's come down to a couple of things: more comfortability, but also more responsibility. He's getting way more minutes in big, crucial situations. Not that he wasn't getting minutes in crucial situations, but he's delivered. And that's the one thing that Rod Brindamore said from day one as the head coach. If you produce, I'll get you the ice time. And that's what's going on with Marty Necas.
That was an amazing homage to Dean Smith. Question about Marty Necas. The way that we keep stats. Andre Svechnikov has been the best player for the Hurricane.
All three of us. I did not cover Dean, but all three of us have covered Mike Krzyzewski and Roy Williams at some point in time. And I'm one of those. I guess you could call it, what would I be, a sadist? I loved covering Coach K because the press conferences were great. You knew if you asked the right question, you get the answer you want. But every third question, no matter what the question was, he was going to answer it how he wanted to, which is just brilliant. Like, Coach, so the sky's blue. Here's why defense is so important to what we do. So I've
amazing. Typically, it was a Josh Graham question that he'd be like, "Nah, F that question. I'm going to answer my question the way." Congratulations to Josh Graham, by the way. He is now officially a dad. Congratulations.
Congrats. Congrats to Graham. Way to go.
And of course, he announced it the only way he could. He turned it into content on his radio show. So congratulations to Josh.
The student has become the master.
Yes, he has. Yes, he has.
I did enjoy the way that you deflected slightly there. And I've been at the last couple of games, and I'm conscious of hijacking press conferences, but I am genuinely curious, and I'll let you answer for Rod here, because I think you probably have the pulse as well. We talked to Rod in the summer, and he said, listen, people might have a misconception about my opinion of Marty Necas. Like, I'm like his biggest advocate. Yeah. He basically said, like, I don't have a problem with him, but even his biggest advocate, and even in the moments of your wildest fever dreams, did we see this? I mean, he's almost at 2 points per game right now.
Yeah. I mean, nobody could say that they saw this.
Yeah.
They could say that the potential and the ability was there. And, a lot of times it's funny. You go back, and I don't want you to think I'm not answering this one either, Giglio, but I am. Like, you go back to guys who played for, like, Bill Parcells or Dean or some really hard line coach. Like, this is what I expect of you. This is how we have to do it. And, maybe the players don't like it at the time. Like, I mean, how many times did you hear, oh, God, I hated playing for this guy? Scotty Bowman in hockey. The Montreal Canadiens were famous for saying, we hated him for 364 days, but the day we won the cup, we loved him. And I'm not saying that Rod's that. Rod is much more a player's coach than what Scotty was at the time. And it's a way different era. But I think that's the thing. Like, Rod Brindamore sees the game the way that if they put the three of us together, we'd still be like maybe 1/100th of the knowledge of how to see the game the way that Rod does. But what he does is, if you put in the work, if you do this, you're going to get to this level. And I think that's what it was. And it was hard on Marty Necas. And sometimes some players are like, well, I can do this, just let me do it. And Rod's like, no, there's a structure you have to go through. And Rod loves the player. He does. And I think I can tell you he loves the person, but sometimes you guys get in disagreements, right, over how to do the show or the topic or what are we going to do here. Never. I know Ovies and I have never had a disagreement about anything ever. But I think it just comes down to sometimes when you're coaching a player hard, it's how do they accept it, and that's where, like, friction will come from. And you also have to remember, Martin Necas is still 26 years old, so
he's still 25.
It's coming into that level. But no, Rod I think has always believed in the player, but Rod also believes in this is how it has to get done. And sometimes that's going to create friction. And I think right now, when you talk about pressure, let me just use the cliche: pressure creates diamonds, and right now the Canes have one. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Either burst pipes or it makes a diamond. There we go. Apologies. I've consumed most of my Hurricanes in person. Okay, so I've not been able to.
Best way to do it.
I have not been able to listen as closely as I would like to your broadcasts. Have you brought up though, Jackson Blake? First of all, not related to Rob Blake, right?
No, he's related to Jason.
Jason Blake. Okay,
yes, Jason is his dad.
Yeah, so I'm sitting here going, like, Rob Blake was really, really good. Like, no wonder why his kids. Then I'm like, okay, wait a second, different Blake. But have you brought this up yet? Have you brought up the revenge plot of Jason Blake's kid playing with the player who inadvertently retired him in Brent Burns?
Yeah, no, I have not brought that up. No.
Okay. Will they be good with that? I don't know. You're fascinated by this.
You're going to a dark place now.
Yeah, I mean, you're going way deep.
It wasn't intentional.
I mean, I know it's an interesting time in America right now, but
I thought you were Joe. I thought you were going to bring up, how interesting is it that Will Carrier was traded to the Buffalo Sabres and a draft pick that went with Will Carrier got traded to Winnipeg that was turned into Jack Roslovic.
Oh.
And now Carrier and Roslovic are on the Canes roster together. I'm here for positivity, Joe Giglio.
But I don't think it's negative. Like, I'm fascinated. Like, have they talked about
it's hockey?
No, I don't think so. And if they have, it has not gone on the public record.
You retired.
But it's hockey. It's sports. I mean, you're trying to turn this into Creed. What's going on?
Princess Bride? Like, you ended my dad's career and I'm now here. Like, what? No. Positivity about Brent Burns. And I guess, I don't want to make this, knock on wood and those kind of things. Health matters, right?
Sure.
And as the season progresses, you're looking at what the Canes are with this new group and what Rod wants to do with a healthy crack at this. And I think we do have for lack of a better term, our scheduled Freddie Anderson. Like, he's going to have his ups and downs throughout the season, right? I think it is what it is. They're comfortable with Kochetkov, even though he had his ups and downs yesterday. But
that was a kind way to put it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you saw what I texted you about it. But regardless, the point that I'm making here is that for the most part, and Burns is a prime example of this, when everybody is essentially at 100%, you're seeing what might have been missing at the end of last year, especially in the case of Burns and how they're trying to play defensively. And you can get your market value. You can find your market inefficiencies, Eric Tulsky, to replace two key defensive pieces. But it also helps that, one guy that is up there in age that you took a chance on is healthy right now, and all that kind of stuff bakes into what we're seeing with this hot start.
No, health, I think, right now in pro sports might be the most important thing for every team, because the margins have gotten so thin, because you can't be as deep as you used to be, especially in the salary cap sports. But the stat, and we had it on the broadcast last night, that this is the first time in over 60 years that since teams have gone to the traditional 18 skaters, meaning 12 forwards and 6 defensemen, that a team has started the exact same 18 players 11 straight games to start the season. You got to go back. I think it was the 63-64 or 62-63 Boston Bruins were the only team for the first 11 games put the same 18 players on the ice. Goalies don't count because you rotate goalies all the way back.
Yeah.
Got to remember.
Hell of a stat.
But yeah, that's what you're looking at. And Brent Burns has always kept himself in phenomenal shape. Mm-hmm. But that's why the playoffs become such a big thing at the end of the year. And you've heard this. God, I'm bringing out all the cliches, so it's sports talk radio for Ovies and me going back. Sorry, Giglio. But I mean, that's why you hear the one thing: the best team doesn't always win, but it's the best team in the playoffs that wins, meaning the healthiest team or the team that can survive whatever injury they've got to go through. But the way this team is playing right now, this is how they're built. This was the foresight of what they had. and they bring in players like Eric Robinson. I hear all the, we're 11 games in. We still have, what? We're only an eighth of the way through the season. So there's a ton of hockey left to be played, but Eric Robinson, Jack Roslovic, Will Carrier, Sean Walker, Shane Gostisbehere, nobody who moved the needle for the 24-hour sports cycle of going, well, now that's put the Canes over the top.
Yeah.
They fit with how the team plays. And if this team can stay healthy, what we've seen through the first 11 games is what you should see every single night. And the thing about the game the other night against Philly wasn't their best game by miles, but it's still good enough to win an NHL game. To me, that is the impressive thing about what this Hurricanes team has done, and has done really the last 4 years under Rod's tenure, of even when it's not their best, it's still good enough to give them a chance to win on most nights.
Yeah. Last night was a classic Rod Brindamore. You look at the final score and then you listen to Rod.
Well, no, he said it. I mean, he said it best though. I say all that, and I think they only gave up 12 shots total in the second and third period. So if one thing doesn't look right, their ability to do the other things right is gonna take this team a really long way when we get to April and May. And I think I've said it every time I've talked to you guys. This team's going to be judged what they do in April, May, and June.
Yeah, that's where they've been.
They gave up 6 shots after the first period last night.
Yeah,
and gave up too many goals. The goaltending was lousy last night. The
5-hole was just.
That's kind of the difference between last year's early season start, right? They were able to overcome the poor goaltending nights.
Mm-hmm.
Last night they were able to overcome a poor goaltending night.
Yeah,
I'm gonna choose positivity with Ovies today and deflect the negativity
positive vibes only.
Giglio. It's like a carousel. You pay your quarter, you get on the horse, you go up and down and around, flow, all good things. But maybe the Canes are at this point right now. Is when Grant Fuhr used to walk into the Edmonton Oilers locker room in the 80s and go, "How many can I give up tonight, boys?" And then that's it. And move on.
Move on, man. That's where it's at.
All
right.
It's not about the ones you let. Here's another one for you, Joe.
Oh, jeez.
Not about the ones you let in. It's about the saves you make.
You're so cliche ridden. Fine. I'm going to bring this up then before you go, because I know you have your actual podcast to do. Call right now, 919-444-2211. Greatest ice cream sundae toppings. Could it be the Slavin Sunday, Mike? Could it be the Slavin Sunday? I had the Slavin Sunday last night at the game. It was fantastic.
Jacob and I align usually when it comes to sweets.
So it's a brownie base.
Already got me.
Yeah, brownie bottom, vanilla ice cream, and then mixed in with hot fudge, a Heath bar crunch.
The Oreo Heath are his two mixers there.
With nuts on top and red sprinkles.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah.
No,
for two.
Okay, this is a Sunday for two. But you know what I did? Because I'm a baller, I'm a gamer, I got grit and hustle. I ate the whole damn thing, and then I chased it with an IPA because that's what real men do.
Sometimes you got to dig deep. I would have gone with a stout. That's just me. But
Joe's like, Trip Tracy would be so proud when you talk about digging in. He talks about digging in a different way. I dig in when it comes to the Sunday, then chasing it with an IPA.
Oil, gas, and
nuts on a Sunday. I can take or leave, because when I was a kid, I had a problem. I had a loose tooth and I ate a Snickers bar, and when I hit the peanut, the tooth came out.
Oof.
So I've always had a weird thing with that afterwards. But I would have gone maybe a little caramel, but I would definitely, if they bring that up to the booth, I am crushing that. Trip is taking over.
All right.
Period.
All right. Well, next time I go to a game, I'll bring you one. I'll make sure Jared makes that happen. All right, man.
Thanks,
we
guys.
will talk to you later.
Thank you. Appreciate the sunshine this morning, Giglio.
Nice. You know what? Nice polo.
I'm telling you, man, you guys are going to do something by the end of the year on the Blake and Burns thing. I promise. I promise. It's like one of those podcast things that you get like Chris Paul talking about punching Jules in the nuts. Like, it's cool, man. Time heals all wounds, man.
I was just about to give Rebecca a shout out for maybe the best golf / polo shirt I own, and I end it with with having to think about Chris Paul going to the man area.
Go to the Jewels. Go to the Jewels.
Yeah.
All right,
All right,
well,
man.
run the Jewels, I guess it is. So.
Yeah. All right, man. Later. Big thanks to Homefield. Check them out online at homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code OG24 to save 15% off your order today. You can get these comfortable hoodies that you can see on the bottom of our YouTube. Or if you're listening on the podcast, I implore you to download the app. A lot of incentives to be a part of that Homefield club. And they got great stuff. T-shirts. They've got the hoodies, obviously. They've got the crew necks. They have hats, they have satin pullovers, the throwbacks, all that at homefieldapparel.com. If you've already used the promo code, no worries, because right now they're having a site-wide sale at homefieldapparel.com. So go to the website, use the promo code OG24 if you haven't yet, and if you already have, no big deal. More ways to save when you go to the website today. Big thanks to Breeze Through. I did not have a chance to hit the Breeze Through yesterday on my way to the arena. No big deal. There will be other opportunities for that to happen. But as Joe Giglio discovered this past weekend, if you're thinking about going to another football game or a basketball game,
you could park there. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be parking there Friday for basketball and then Saturday for football, last stay-at-home game of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So check them out while you're there. Get yourself some great snacks or drinks, whatever. They have everything. Gas. There's a car wash there, as our friend JC explained to me once.
I am a big fan of that car wash and clean bathrooms. Very key. Big thanks to Mosquito Authority and Pest Authority. Check them out online at bugsbite.com. You can bundle and save with those two services. You can start thinking about 2025 of putting the services together. Maybe you're thinking, you know what, I want to step my game up on the patio. There's ways to help out with that. Misting systems, all sorts of crazy stuff that bugsbite.com can help you with. Whereas it gets colder out, critters are trying to come in, maybe moisture in the crawl space. They have moisture barriers and the like. It's all at bugsbite.com. Bundle and save with our friends at Mosquito Authority and Pest Authority. Why are you shaking your head?
Zeus is so preposterous.
That's the whole point. I mean, Brian singing Lightning Round to the final countdown is preposterous. So the only thing that makes sense to put along with a preposterous song is a preposterous image of Zeus that I AI generated on Adobe stock.
It's fair.
All right. Also, pretty absurd is the fact that the NFL suddenly has a hot stove.
Okay.
Since when did the NFL trade deadline become a thing? Okay. Like,
yeah.
If you know, it's the dead of summer, rank trade deadlines. Your Mount Rushmore, if Maniscalco was here, we had easily done this, you know, the Yankee fan lament. You know, I wanted to keep it positive vibes with Mike only. That's why I didn't bring up the Yankees.
Okay.
But the point is, typically you associate a trade deadline with Woj bombs or Shams bombs in the NBA.
Baseball forever.
The NHL has a pretty ridiculous trade deadline.
Robust.
Very robust. The NFL is not one of them. Typically, if you're going to see some wheeling and dealing, it happens around the draft time, new league year, that kind of stuff. But the NFL was suddenly a hot wide receiver market. And it's been interesting to see how people have reacted to Jonathan Mingo being traded to the Dallas Cowboys for a 7th round pick that they gave along with Jonathan Mingo. They got a 4th round pick in return. And the over explanations have been there, right? There's this whole business of all in. Jerry's all in. I put this on TikTok, and somehow the Dallas Cowboys fans, it got in their slipstream, and they're all just gallows humor in the comment section on the TikTok. And I said this yesterday, and I think it's worth repeating. If you look at it from the perspective of the Dallas Cowboys being quote unquote all in, why are you still telling yourself that? Jerry's already gone into, I got to start thinking about next year because their cap situation is going to suck in Dallas. And you know, I'm a big proponent of the cap not being real. The salary cap is fake. It's like birds. But it looks like the Dallas Cowboys are trying to mitigate some of those circumstances. I think, what did I see? Was it Dak Prescott's like $90 million towards the cap? They got the CD Lamb deal. Again, a lot of the, you could have solved this earlier problems for Jerry Jones at the Dallas Cowboys are coming home to roost next season. So how do you mitigate that? Well, you get a guy, a 2023 draft pick, 2nd rounder, who's got a workable deal for the next couple of years. You're trying to find value there. Now, the other thing I'm going to say about the Jonathan Mingo trade that I saw a lot of pushback on, like, well, what quarterback was he working with? Not the freaking point. Not the freaking point. Even Jalen Coker's getting like legitimate minutes out there. Mingo could not. 0 touchdowns. I don't care who the quarterback is. 0 touchdowns. That's a problem. So you can try to do the cope if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan. It's like, you don't understand. Jerry found a diamond in the rough here. Dude, you were telling you would have cut him in the preseason.
I would have cut him and the kid from LSU when they dropped those passes against the Patriots in the first game.
Yeah.
They ultimately did cut the kid from LSU, but they didn't cut him. And I'm stunned that anybody wanted him. I still think maybe the Cowboys hired one of his family members because they're the only people who could find value in him.
So, look, I give a lot of credit to the Carolina Panthers for getting anything for Jonathan Mingo. Honestly, just getting anything in that situation. But there's another potential as to why we're seeing the hot stove, right? Because if you look across the rest of
Lattimore is the big trade from the Saints to the Commandos.
Yes, that was the big deal. The Commanders are in a win now mode situation, right? So Marshawn Lattimore acquired him from the Saints. He's 28 years old and still in his prime. So that shows you that the Commanders see an opportunity in the NFC East. They're trying to do that. Zadarius Smith was traded from the Browns. The defensive end was traded from the Browns to the Lions.
Yeah, that was the biggest move of the day. I mean, people were excited about Lattimore to Washington.
Because it's Washington. Washington's good and people are feeling the vibes right now.
That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Adam Schefter, my least favorite newsbreaker, or the least newsbreaking newsbreaker of all time, last week had a story about, oh man, according to my sources, players are asking to be traded to Washington.
I saw that.
And then ergo, here comes the trade. Oh yeah, see, I told you, Washington is a hot destination. And it's just like, okay, cool. The Lions are actually going to win the NFC and went out and made a move that they needed to after losing Aiden Hutchinson.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I think it was Mike Florio over at ProFootballTalk.com who was like, yeah, that Adam Schefter BS about how people want to be traded to Washington. Go connect the dots of who's in the ownership group, who are agents, who knows Schefter, and how is that message getting across. But speaking of Mike Florio, over on ProFootballTalk.com, he starts out this news item with parity schmarity, right? This kind of bolsters your point. The NFL has sucked this year.
Okay.
9 of the 32 teams have 2 wins or fewer through 9 weeks. 7 of those teams have played 9 games. The 2-win teams include Miami, New England, Cleveland, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Las Vegas, the Giants, the Panthers, and New Orleans. He says parity schmarity because if you understand the whole point of the NFL, why the NFL has been able to rise to this level of dominance is because every team, for the most part, has an idea of, hey, we're still in the mix, right? 8-8. We can get into the playoffs at 7-9 if we need to. We can win our division, right? But the bottom has dropped out on a lot of teams, which I'll take it a step further, okay? So that you get this little fun fact about a bunch of teams with only 2 wins that are completely out of it. I'm going to take a step further. The NFL has been able to survive some ratings ups and downs, right? I saw Mike Mulvihill, who is a longtime Fox Sports guy, TV guy. He's interesting if you're into ratings and all that kind of stuff. And he backed up typically in an election year, NFL ratings will drop.
Okay, because people are more engaged in politics.
But there was a study out there that like 80% of people who voted had made up their minds in September.
I would think before,
right? I mean, nothing should surprise people. So the point is that Mulvihill's point was that because the election coverage was decided essentially in the summertime, nobody was consuming news 24/7 and NFL ratings didn't see a dip. That's great, especially with scoring being down early on too, because that was my big red flag. I'm like, man, ain't nobody scoring. That's gonna catch up to them. Now that's kind of dissipated over time. But here's where the real ratings issue is going to be. There's a lot of trash now with 2 wins. There's no reason to watch the Dolphins. No. There's no real reason to watch the Carolina Panthers. Why are you watching the Giants at this? Why are you watching the Giants and the Panthers this weekend? Right? In Europe.
It's on early. Another one of those European disaster pieces.
I guess, right? So all of these things kind of bake in the possibility that ratings might see a little bit of a dip. But then I see Monday Night Football and they get massive ratings because it's the Chiefs. So, and Taylor
Have
Swift
the
was
Chiefs
there.
even played I guess they played the Raiders 2 weeks ago on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Daytime. Like their entire schedule has been as it should be. And please don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating for them not to like money.
Speaking of which,
Topics stack it up. Giglio's roll back it up. Well, I know what we'll do. A lightning round.
you in on the Chiefs running the table?
They probably won't run the table. There'll be a stumble in there, 1 or 2, but I mean, I think they'll win 15 games. I think they'll go 15-2.
That's fair. That's fair. I can see them running the table and doing so in a way that is so uninspiring that a lot of people are going to bet against them once they get to the playoffs. Because look, you got the Lions, you got all this other stuff. Like people are really, really hyped up, right? Because they haven't looked overwhelmingly great. But I think that's one thing that people tend to forget when it comes to the Chiefs. It's not all that dissimilar to where the New England Patriots were, right? Where you got a coach that doesn't, you got a team, it's not a coach, you have a team that doesn't hurt itself for the most part. Or other teams put you in a position like the Buccaneers did going, I know what we'll do.
Let's kick an extra point.
It's like I tell my kid all the time when it's driving, I'm like, I'm not worried about your driving. I'm worried about other people on the road and you recognizing defensive driving. That's kind of the Chiefs right now when it comes to the NFL.
There are many topics for lightning rounds today on OG.
You love the Postal Service version.
He's amazing. He's just amazing.
All right. You know how I like to play the game? Listen to Dave Canales talk about Bryce Young and go, and do you even like this guy? Right? I have a new one for you.
Oh, no.
This is former Panther DJ Moore.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And this is again from ProFootballTalk.com. Bears head coach Matt Eberflus said he wasn't sure why DJ Moore left the field, but Moore was not asked about the play during an appearance on 670 The Score earlier this week. He was asked if he thinks the team's last 2 games are a sign that Eberflus has lost the team. Eberflus has really ramped up in the next coach to be fired.
Yeah.
It's no longer Doug Peterson. It's not Nick Sirianni. It's not Mike McCarthy. Eberflus and how things have been going. It's going bad, right? And DJ Moore has clearly been unhappy, yada, yada, yada. Here's the quote to 670 The Score. I want to say no. Again, you were asked, has Eberflus lost the team? Your response, I repeat, quote, I want to say no.
I want to. So what you're saying is, yes, got it. I want to.
I want to say no, but
that would not be accurate.
Buddy, that's bad. That is bad. Joining us on the Heister Automotive Group hotline from Renew Physiotherapy, all part of O2 Fitness. It's time for the jingle.
Fitness, so much more than a gym.
Way more than a gym. I'm there for the gym. Joe's there to get his neck worked on. Gabby, you help with these types of things at the Briar Creek location as all part of O2 and Renew Physiotherapy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Doing fantastic, although my hamstring is fine. Unlike Dak Prescott, whose hamstring is not fine. He's going to miss some games here. And I feel like hamstrings keep kind of coming up in these conversations. A little bit of a tricky thing to get a handle on. Is that kind of like a correct assessment of that?
Yeah, hamstrings are tough. I mean, they're one of the easiest muscles to pull in the body. And with these explosive athletes, it's super common for it to happen. And you always got to look out for the severity. And the biggest thing is to rest it initially, because the sooner you rest it, the sooner you can get back on the field.
Rest is
I
always
can't
the
even
answer,
count how many
right?
we've had this year.
Yeah, rest is the answer.
Some
Unfortunately,
ice, rest it up, but
Yeah,
that's easy for us
initially, yeah.
on the weekend. But
Yeah. Not for a football player. You don't get that time to rest, you know?
Cowboys are not going to love that one.
we had the start of college basketball season this week, and one of NC State's best players, his name is Mike James, had a knee scope, and he'll be out for 4 weeks. Coach Kevin Keats said. I'm curious. What does a scope even mean? Or what are they going in there to do? What are we cleaning up? Are we cleaning up cartilage? And how does that kind of differ? Obviously from any kind of muscle tear or ligament damage. But we have this idea like, oh, they're just going to scope it and it'll be right back out. What are some of the real steps there when we're talking about a knee injury like that?
So they go in with usually just about 2 ports into the knee. So one for a camera, one for the tool. And you're right. Yep. They usually typically are cleaning out cartilage. With any sort of abnormal biomechanics, it can kind of shred up the cartilage in the knee. And so they actually just go in and kind of clip all that may be catching and causing discomfort. So since they're not adjusting any sort of ligament, muscle, tendon, they're just going in and kind of cleaning out. There's usually a really fast return. Obviously, with that scope, there's still swelling. So that's what takes about the 4 weeks, because that swelling will limit quad activation, and you have to wait for the incisions to heal up, usually about 2 weeks. I personally have had one of these myself, so very familiar with the process.
So after the swelling goes down, is it just all right, you're good to go, just get back out there and do the thing, or is there another ramp up period after the swelling has gone down and the stitches clear up?
Typically, you want a ramp up period. You want to make sure that the quad's still firing, that the knee is stable. But with something that simple, it tends to be a pretty quick ramp up period. Not a ton of rehab, but you always want to make sure you check everything and consider that the quad fires. Because if not, then that'll yield further injury down the road.
Not everyone can get a scope, though. If I have a wonky knee and I'm worried about my I'm worried about my driver on the golf course, what are some good things we could do at Renew Physiotherapy?
Renew, we can work on some of the soft tissue mobilization. Doing a lot of instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization helps that fascia and all the tendons work a lot better. And then doing some good exercise to stabilize the knee, tolerate that rotational movement, especially with your driver. And then again, I always highly recommend dry needling for any of those trigger points that get created.
I think I'm not too far. We'll say goodbye on this. I'm not too far from joining Giglio for a dry needling session, because my left knee, I was on the bike earlier this week and my left knee was saying, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And it's like, is it a matter of exercising the knee that it gets better over time now that I'm exercising again, or am I actually just doing something that's making my knee worse? So I'm just going to have to suck it up and make the call.
It's the best thing to do. You might as well get checked out by the professional.
Getting old is amazing.
Then you know the answer and you can take care of it accordingly.
Getting old is amazing. Gabby over at O2 Renew. We appreciate the time as always. We'll chat with you later. Speaking of backing it up, go to rowback.com right now. Use that promo code OG20 to save 20% off your order. RHOBACK.com. I'm looking forward to our exclusive boutique. What?
It's a secret. The access is secret.
I understand. Okay. But eventually we're going to be wearing them on the podcast.
Yes,
eventually. And people are going to be like, where'd you get that? I'm like, super secret. Just saying. Because I am allowed to wear it, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just double checking.
Our corporate champions.
And they can outfit you, as you saw with Mike Maniscalco earlier. He wants to sleep in that polo.
It's the best. They're the best golf shirts. I mean.
So go to rowback.com. Use that promo code OG20. Big thanks to Butcher's Market. I had their meatloaf the other night. Was it 2 nights ago I had their meatloaf?
That feels like a bold choice.
Not the frozen meatloaf. They have a frozen meatloaf option. I'm talking about in the tin, fresh ground with the sauce on top.
Where they have like the pies and the macaroni salad, a potato salad.
It's like what was it? Like $3.75 in the refrigerator. It's like $3.75, like 30 minutes for every pound, right?
Okay.
So put that bad boy in for 90 minutes because it was 2.5 pounds of meat. And I tell you what, man, that was really good. Like, I usually pride myself on making my own meatloaf. This is really good meatloaf, man. And the sauce was on point. So go to the Butcher's Market. You can get something simple like that. You can get your Thanksgiving all taken care of, all the entertainment. It's all at thebutchersmarkets.com because now they do catering. Big thanks to Nature's Relief. It might explain why I housed an entire 2 roosters slaving Sunday because of Nature's Relief. Hey, look, I'm just saying, you might need to take a little bit of the edge off this week.
Mm-hmm.
You might need, man, I cannot get to sleep. Hey,
Check out our friends. Hillsborough Street. You could find them. Western Boulevard. They're the Garner location. My personal favorite, Garner, right? Out on Glenwood, the OG, the old school out there. Come on, man.
business.
They got you.
Business will be booming. Joining us in studio from the Section 17 podcast and the Durham Devils Club, he is Josh Cox. Josh, what's going on, man?
Hey, man. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming in. We've been talking a lot about NIL. We actually were talking about NIL and CJ Bailey yesterday and state and everything else. And I actually made this comment to Joe the other day. It's like state's going to try. And I feel like, Carolina's got a bunch of rich dudes, but so does Duke. And Duke's got this new commitment to football and whatnot. And with NIL, if you get the right people to spend the right kind of money, things can kind of change real quick. So we always talk about how NIL affects everybody. I feel like Duke's maybe benefited from how things are going right now in football. Is that an accurate assessment?
I think the best way of putting it is teams like Duke and schools like Duke are now in the conversation for players or situations that maybe they weren't in the conversation with. I mean, the classic example, and I don't know how much you follow football recruiting, but the Bryce Davis recruitment.
Josh, how long have you listened?
I know. Okay. But sorry.
Do I follow recruiting?
Sorry. But
He was almost offended there.
I'm sorry.
Do you even listen, bro?
Sir.
But
the Wendy's.
But understanding how that went down. And while NIL was not the 100% deciding factor there, just the fact that you saw Duke on those graphics, the Final Three, all of those things, obviously it levels the playing field, I believe, on certain individual players. Now, across the board, I still think that you have the haves and the have-nots in the NIL space, right?
Okay.
I mean, you've got your Tennessees and you've got your Ohio States, and then you've got everybody else.
It does seem that Nina King has been ahead of this in terms of this is how Duke football in particular could make some moves. I always say they had the XE&Oist football coach in Mike Elka. Then you go to Manny, who's probably more known for his personality, his recruiting, not necessarily X's and O's, but Manny has made it work this year. And in large part, I think in part because of what they've been able to do and bring players in. You look at the quarterback, that doesn't happen if you don't have a collective and kind of the foresight to make this work. So I don't know how much you want to talk about, but just in terms of I know coaches aren't allowed to directly communicate with players. So that makes the collective super important. You have a very important role when it comes to how to build a program and how to shape and how it goes forward.
Yes, certainly. And I understand too that there are a lot of opinions out there about NIL and what it is and what it isn't and what it was intended to be and what it should be in the future. And, I'll have all those conversations, right, about my personal opinions, I guess, about those things. But at the end of the day, the reality is what the reality is. And you're right. NIL factors in. Yeah. I think primarily it factors in retention. I know you guys were speaking about this yesterday about NC State with CJ Bailey. And it's the conversation needs to be happening right now with him before, legally the open market can get to him. Now, tampering, I don't think is any longer anything that gets punished. But at the end of the day, retention is huge. Recruitment is huge. Sorry. You look at Duke, didn't have an offensive line in spring ball last year and was able to put together, it's been a makeshift work in progress offensive line, but they've kept Malik Murphy off his butt for the majority of the season. And they've been able to put that together. Those guys really legitimately met each other in mid-July, end of July, when they showed up on campus. So
I am curious, as part of the NIL collective, and when you're talking to the players and their representatives, and it's the Wild West. I mean, because there's no actual, and they keep talking about guardrails, but there's no real guardrails right now. And Joe had floated out the idea with CJ Bailey specifically, and I guess you could probably bring Duke into the mix with Riley Leonard, right? What did Riley tell us at ACC kickoff 2 years ago?
He never had to tell anyone no twice, but he was asked a lot after that first year at Duke about what he returned for that second year.
And 1 year where you decide to come back is one thing. Okay. You're taken care of. But what about the following year? Obviously, Riley Leonard goes off to Notre Dame. And with CJ Bailey, it's, maybe CJ does come back for next year. I could see that. But what about the year after that?
Mhm.
What about his junior year, his true junior year? After another year, somebody comes back with yet another offer. And there's this idea of like, why don't you just lock him down to a multi-year situation, right? So is that even possible with NIL? Is there such a thing? And what's the binding contract to that if somebody comes in with another offer? Because it's not like we're dealing with a CBA. You bring up tampering. Again, there's no CBA. So how does an NIL handle that?
Yeah, well, first of all, NIL collectives that are appropriately operating, they are under contract, legal contract that they sign, agents, family, whatever, look over them.
Sure.
There's negotiation there, honestly, obviously back and forth a little bit. But I think the multi-year thing is absolutely in play. And I don't know that it's been in play in the past with NIL, but I do believe now moving forward that multi-year, is absolutely in play. And it combats, I understand NIL has radically changed college athletics, but the transfer portal coupled with NIL has really flipped it, right? Completely a 180 to what it used to be. And I think it will mitigate a little bit of that transfer portal. So the contracts, I think there's a couple of ways of looking at, like, could someone get out of the contract and like, can they make a decision just to take off? Certainly the contracts, at least the ones that we put out are pretty airtight as far as binding. However, I don't know that any collective / school is going to want to be the school that like doesn't allow someone to do something that they really feel like is in their best interest. And so I'll be honest with you, that's a bridge that I think will be crossed in the near future, but hasn't necessarily been crossed yet.
Because there's an easy answer out there. I mean, we saw this with the UNLV. If you're not, as a school, not following through on what was promised, well, then yes, the player is going to take some of his own action here. Yep. But what happens when the school is doing exactly as promised and you sign them to 2 years and you just get a better offer? And it's like, yeah, that's great that you get a better offer, but we have this contract. Now you could buy yourself out of a contract. Right. That's the other scenario here too. Again, this is where my wife shows up on my shoulder and she says, yeah, all contracts are not binding because there's always a price that can be paid to get you out of that contract. Any contract can be broken. Right. Just depends on how much you're willing to spend to get out of that contract. So, I mean, what are we, like European soccer here, where it's like, you know what, we're just going to buy you. I mean, literally buy out that contract. And then, because I can see where the NIL goes, yeah, we'll let you out of the contract if you give us the money back, which then can get poured back into your own collective.
Which you're thinking in theory, whoever's coming to get your player has got the money.
Yes.
Right. They've got the money to go after said player. And
I'll use it. I mean, the number for Riley Leonard is allegedly $3 million in Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Like, even if you paid $1 million for Malik, that's still a savings. Like
it is.
I mean, well, and think about this: if to use your illustration, if Riley Leonard is under a multi-year contract, let's say that he was, and he wants out. Okay, Notre Dame's just like, okay, well what is it? Right?
You gotta pay the difference.
What's the price?
And that helps you though,
right?
You know what I mean? Like I don't see a loss there but you have to get the player to agree to that multi-year deal. That's where the issue becomes. It would almost have to be a recruit like Riley who was overlooked, right? That, or even CJ, who you're going to and saying, "Hey, man, these are your options, but we believe in you. We'll give you a 2 or 3 year deal." You know, on the other end of that, though, it's harder to get someone like a Malik for a discounted rate because you're getting him. You're competing against everybody.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It's just as Tennessee allegedly had to give Iamaleava $12 million. That's because they're competing against everybody. Dominic Raiola at Nebraska. Sure. You're competing against everybody at that point. Yep. So you're paying top dollar. But, you know, I could see an NC State, a Duke, East Carolina, App State being able to find a player, recruit a player, and say, hey, we believe in you. This is what we see what your path is. Let me give you a multi-year deal.
I think in good faith too, you know, written in there or the understood agreement there would be, hey, listen, after 1 year, 2 years, depending on how long.
Yeah, here's the buyout.
Yeah, or let's renegotiate, right?
Sure.
Let's come back to the table and
if you really blow up.
Correct. Let's see what the evaluation is at that point, you know, and move forward. But I do feel like to bring some stability to programs, and I would say this, no matter if we were sitting there talking about Oregon or Tennessee, or we're talking about, you know, triangle football, I still think to bring some sort of like consistency to your program where you're not flipping your entire roster every year. You know, this is one of the answers, right? Potentially to solving
You
that.
hear a lot of coaches talk about their biggest issue with the portal and NIL is your own roster and protecting and trying to keep your own players and trying to keep other ones away. And I mean, that's where I wish the NCAA would have some sort of structure, which I believe should be an employment structure. I'm curious though, what kind of education does Duke or the NCAA give a collective? You say Wild Wild West, you talk about knowing what the rules are, what they aren't. What kind of direction or what kind of guidance do they give you in terms of like, hey, here's what's legal, here's some verbiage to put in a contract, or what kind of guidance are they giving you guys?
So there's not really direct guidance given to collectives, because the collective relationship with athletic departments is kind of a unique one in the sense of only recently are you seeing like, UNC kind of brought it in-house and kind of made one and officially, but really there's always been separation,
church and state
needed
there.
separation,
Sure.
right? And so the collective always operated, with at least at Duke, it's always been with the blessing and support of the athletic department, but as a separate entity, right? And so as far as NCAA, they will send out different things about maybe the financial implications, tax implications, making sure that things like that. And then it's kind of up to the school and the collective to then communicate those things to the student athletes, right? To understand the implications there. But there are some people, we're part of the TCA, the Collective Association. And that is, they kind of, if you want to look at this, they kind of lobby on behalf of collectives. There's been a lot to be said about this house case that's going on. They have representatives that are like on the ground, and there's like a monthly, get together with the collectives that are a part of that association. And so you kind of hear like, what is the NCAA saying or what are the courts saying? And you kind of get a little bit of a feel for it, whether that's not necessarily groundbreaking stuff. I think that stuff gets out into the media as well. But at least there is representation felt by collectives, on the legal side.
How have the Iron Dukes embraced the collective world? I know we've seen, speaking at ECU, there was a lot of consternation there between, the Pirate Club and some of these collectives and not exactly all being on the same page. So how has it been at Duke? Because when I think of the definition of old money, I think of the Iron Dukes, sir.
Yes, certainly. So as with, you mentioned ECU. I don't know that there's been any university that's been immune to the initial push for NIL dollars, especially when, there's more education around NIL than there has been in the past now. But really, you look at, say, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when it was like no one really knew what was going on. And you have these asks that are being given. And so I will say this, and this is not just a media answer, the relationship that Duke and the Iron Dukes have with what is going on with the collective and NIL is much more in alignment, and much more, there's much more synergy there than probably people would think and what has been in the past. And the reason is because we've really tried to step away from tapping into that individual donor. Honestly, as you guys know, listen, it's Duke. There are a lot of individual donors, but a lot of those individual donors have avenues that they already give to. And the Iron Dukes does an incredible job at what they do in fundraising. And then you have those that give to the university. So Duke celebrated its centennial anniversary this year as a university. And so you have university side fundraising. And so what happened with collectives is they come in with an ask and they become that third wheel, and it creates a lot of tension. And so our collective specifically has really decided to individual donors. It's great. And we appreciate anyone that wants to. We're actually doing a push right now for like individual memberships, which we perk them out and things like that. Shout out DurhamDevilsClub.com. But where we really want to focus, where we really feel like the sustainability is in corporate sponsorships and partnersms.
I was going to say your basketball side does this better than anybody.
Correct. And by the way, just so you're aware, so Duke does operate with two collectives. And men's and women's basketball has a collective, and then our collective works with football and all the other Olympic sports, which is
basketball's like no, we don't need you.
No, but
we're good.
listen, I mean,
So to speak on that, and I mean, I get it completely. Like I'm a lifelong,
They don't need you.
sure.
but I think really, if you want to, the true answer is the needs are completely different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Completely different. It's a completely different ball of wax. For
You're
men's
trying to be
football.
triangle good in football.
Wow.
Correct.
You're trying to be triangle good in football.
We want to be bowl eligible every year and then have that 8 to 9 win season. And
Duke
and,
basketball's trying to win championships.
Correct.
There's a difference between triangle good and championship.
And by the way, if you need the YouTube SEO, we can drop a couple Cooper flags.
Thank you. Cooper
Right
Flag.
now.
Cooper Flag.
That's right.
I would
Cooper
say this:
Flag.
the coaches in the business that I talk to all say that Duke basketball obviously is the exception, but they do it the way that it was always intended to be.
Right.
EA Sports,
Yep.
AT&T,
Yeah.
you're
Gatorade.
talking
Yeah.
Gatorade,
Yeah.
Nike, just
Yeah.
huge.
That's right, 'cause
huge brands.
Speaking of Cooper
Huge.
Flag, he got a Gatorade deal.
Yeah.
Cooper Flag. Is Cooper Flag going to be at the NC State Duke game?
I don't believe so.
No.
I'm not sure about Cooper Flag coming to that
Thank you.
game, but
Thank you.
he
Will
did
you be
also-
there? Will you be
YouTube.
there?
I will be
on
there.
YouTube.
I will
Let's
be
go.
there.
All right.
I will say though, he signed the New Balance deal. So
He did.
one of the things, and where we as collectives kind of stay out a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
all of these, especially on basketball side, but your most of your football guys have representation personally.
Yeah.
And they're free to explore those options, and we assist in any way that we can. But that they're free to do that. And then, since a lot of people, will listen to this, collectives also operate. This isn't pay for play. Even though I understand the perception, right? But there are like scopes of work that are put out there. That both the student athlete, their agents, their families understand. And so like there is an element to that. And I understand like, for the common person that those things might not translate and be, up to par with what we would say, the wage should or should not be. But at the end of the day, I think that's something, as we go back to what we were talking about earlier with these multi-year contracts and stuff like that, even when it goes into rev share, the whole incentive based and like, if you're a certain type of player, we're going to, like an NFL contract, right? You play so many snaps, you have so many sacks, you make an all-pro team. I don't know how that will ever get worked into NIL just because of the scope of work that's supposed to be done.
So anyway, thanks for coming by.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of this was a two-pronged thing to bring you up to the studio, because you had reached out and you wanted to kind of talk about NIL and let people know where Duke was. And I was like, okay, that'll be interesting because I have lots of questions about NIL. I know Joe has questions about NIL. But I also wanted to bring you up here to like in the flesh show Giglio that Duke football fans do exist.
Of course.
In the flesh.
I see it.
Of course.
In the flesh,
So,
Joe.
Somebody on this show dumped the Gatorade and gave Manny the coach of the year.
There's still time.
After he was 5-0.
There's still time, Joe.
They've lost 3 of 4 now. So if you are a Duke football fan, where's your angst, sir? What's your angst level at after losing 3 of 4?
Well, I mean, I will say that the last 2 games have been, shout out to Miami, against, what has played out, at least right now, to be the top 2 teams in the league, right?
Yes.
SMU. And if you follow that SMU game, the most bizarre
Should
football
not have
game.
ended that way.
They should have won that game.
Yeah, I mean, 6
That's where your
6 to
angst
nothing
is. That's where your
turnover.
angst
Yeah,
is.
I mean,
It's as simple as that.
yeah, 6-0. And so I believe, not speaking on behalf of all Duke fans, but I believe, 6-3, obviously you'd rather be 7-2, especially after having a 30-yard field goal to win the game and a guy jumps the offensive line. And
Which I still don't understand why that was legal.
I think they're saying he went between. My question mark was like, do you not like at least lift your head up, at
So
the
make it
snap,
so he's coming over.
or maybe,
I got
you know what I mean? Or maybe like push forward and, the guy gets tripped and lands on his head, So anyway, but all that to say, that's water under the bridge at this point. 6-3, I think Duke fans in July, there were people saying as low as 3.5, right? And then I think it ended at 5.5 or 4.5,
Something like that. Yeah.
On
It was 5.5 was it?
Yeah. So
5.5.
So Duke is at 6. I think Duke feels confident. I mean, 100% confident that one of these last 3 games is going to be a win. It's NC State, it's Virginia Tech, and it's Wake Forest.
Yeah.
And we can, discuss that. And then I think there is a world in which all 3 of these could be a win.
Sure.
It depends on which teams on either side show up. And that is what ACC football has just turned into, right? Every year. So
welcome to Triangle Good.
That's right.
And I still think Manny's still in the running for it with the 3 remaining games. Josh, hey man, thanks for coming by. Very cool conversation. A lot of information, educational. We appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
Big thanks to Whitaker and Hamer. Check them out online at wh.lawyer, attorneys and counselors at law. Maybe you find yourself with a traffic violation. Maybe you are in a dispute with your HOA. You need legal representation. You might be Joe Giglio. It's wh.lawyer, ladies and gentlemen. Whitaker and Hamer.
So many problems. Josh has all the answers, though. Thankfully, wh.lawyer.
Maybe you hate your HOA situation. You want to get out of that. This is why you call Hometown Realty, my HTR. And you go, hey,
perfect seg.
I don't want to live in a neighborhood with an HOA. They got you. So contact myhtr.com. Buy, sell, calculate, and tell them, I don't want an HOA. It's that simple. myhtr.com. Big thanks to Happy and Hale. After I housed an entire Slave and Sunday, it might be time to follow that up with
today's a cleanse.
It's a little something. A little roughage.
You had the hot honey chicken, though.
I did.
I have not had the hot honey chicken yet.
Dude, it's good.
Today might be a hot honey chicken.
Well, if it is, bring me back some.
Okay.
So go to Happy and Hale, download the app. Giglio can go. He can order it on the app, pick it up real quick, and then we can bring it back here to the studio, and it's all good. You can do the same thing, whether it's for a quick in and out for lunch, or just a healthier option that leaves you feeling full and satisfied. It's all at Happy and Hale. Check them out today. We thank them for being a corporate champion.
Hear the podcast calling.
Let's get out of here with some Hey Joe. To YouTube from Heel. Yeah, Gary Parrish also highlighted the highest rated ACC transfer this year was Cade Tyson at number 34. Is Gary Parrish right? Is the ACC poor? I don't think the ACC is poor.
Highest rated transfer according to
what?
What?
Exactly. But I think the point that I was making about Ken Palm and Gary Parrish and the eye on college basketball, it's incredibly difficult to cover the entirety of college basketball. There's too many teams, too many conferences, too many things going on. So if you're going to try to talk about the entirety of college basketball, you're going to have to rely on metrics. I'm not faulting the fact. I mean, I rely on metrics. It's not like I can watch all the ACC teams for heaven's sake, especially this league. I ain't staying like our caller yesterday on the OG Sports Phone. I ain't waiting up till 11:30 at night to watch California versus Bakersfield.
No.
You say Bakersfield, I'm thinking the Butcher of Bakersfield, which is a reference to The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger, okay? So
you lost me.
Exactly, but that's where my brain goes. I'm like, I ain't watching Cal Bakersfield. What are you talking about, right? So you rely on the metrics to help you tell the story.
Sure.
But there is an inflection point where the metrics stop telling you the story and you actually have to watch some of this stuff. And that might explain why the ACC has had the success that it had in March. From Corey, Ken Palm, I like how he said Ken Palm, unless that's a Jerry Palm, Ken Palm mashup, can now completely ignore the Pac-12. Yeah, there is that. From LAC, why the F am I so interested in the Dave Canales secretly loathes Bryce Young conversation? Ovi is making some points. I feel like my mom, who thought people were treating LeBron so poorly when he left Miami that she started to pray for him. Not kidding. True story. From that Catholic woman, does Bryce need prayers?
Probably.
He does. Watching the Panthers play means that I feel like I need prayers. All right, let's go to the OG Sports Phone and see what we got.
919-444-2211. Call the OG Sports Phone and curse or don't.
This is from a 919.
Hey guys, out here in Western North Carolina, but using the Canes as a nice distraction tonight. How about Martin Necas? I think you guys should try to set up a corporate synergy moment, though. Necas relief. That's all I got. Bye.
Do we need to call Doug? Or are they just going to steal more of our people?
That might be dicey, but we can make that one work. It's got to be a way.
Doug, I know you're listening.
Maybe in Marty's home country, it'd be easier.
Maybe that's the case. All right. From a 540 number.
Hey guys, it's Freddie from Duke Report. First wanted to say love the podcast. I wanted to ask you guys, with the Hurricanes already in season, college basketball starting up in the Triangle, along with the back end of the college football season, would Ovies, Giglio, and or Luke look at trying to attend multiple games in one day again, like you have in the past? Have you looked at the schedules to see if there is a day that you could attend multiple games? I've enjoyed that multiple games content in the past, and you guys inspired me to do 2 games in 2 states, where I go to a Duke basketball game in Durham, North Carolina, and head back to Roanoke, Virginia for a Rail Yard Dogs hockey game in the same day. I'll be attending that 3 years running, so thank you for the inspiration. Anyway, enjoy the content and glad to be in the Founders Club, and take care.
First off, we don't talk about the Rail Dogs on this podcast. Okay.
Uh-oh, did something happen?
We don't talk about the Rail Dogs on this podcast.
Okay.
Just saying.
All right.
Anyway. In fact, you might have heard the email thing go through.
Oh, no.
That's with the Charleston Stingrays. I might be reworking some magic here.
Okay.
Anyway, not the point.
Well, we appreciate Freddie either way.
We do appreciate Freddie. I have to look at the schedule. I honestly have not looked at the schedule yet.
Yeah, you're more interested in that than I am.
Yeah, you're old, man.
Yeah.
You don't like being in the car for a very long time.
No.
You don't want to go to a bunch of different things.
No.
I don't know, man. If I can make it so that there's 3 basketball games, a hockey game, we could throw Central into the mix too, right? I'd be willing to try that again.
I would definitely go to an NC Central game. Because I could see the game and I could actually figure out what's going on without getting impregnated at Duke or, Carolina. You can't really see the game.
What are you talking about? You should
State, you're up top. I can't see the game.
You should like going to Duke because that is where they will put it in your ear. Literally. Literally put it in your ear, Joe, which you love. You love putting it in the ear. So,
nope.
No? Not interested in that? Fair enough. All right, that's going to wrap it up for the OG. We will see you for an OG Butcher's Market live tomorrow, starting at 2:00 on YouTube.